Sample and population, let's dive a little bit deeper. So we collect some data from a sample with the purpose of estimating parameters for the population or drawing conclusions about the population. Sometimes those conclusions might involve the relationship between two variables. One example is this idea of talking about a cause and effect relationship between two variables. Depending on the type of study we develop, we might be able to show a cause and effect relationship, or maybe something a little bit weaker, that there's just an association between two variables. For example, as variable A increases, variable B tends to increase, but that's just they're associated. We're not saying A is actually causing B to increase. So it's a bit weaker of a conclusion. So let's look at a couple of examples here. We might ask the question, does frequent cell phone use cause cancer? There have been lots of studies on that, actually. We might ask the question, is depression associated with increased television viewing? So do those two variables, watching a lot of TV and getting depression, are those two associated with one another? Not saying one causes the other. Or is depression associated with less physical activity? Again, not saying one causes the other, but just do those two tend to go hand in hand? Let's think of a couple of others to jot down as examples. So since we're not face-to-face at the moment, I'll toss in a couple that are commonly suggested by students. One might be something like, does studying more increase grades? And I'll say not necessarily. It depends how you're studying. But if you study more, your grade's going to get higher. Might be a question of interest. And another one a student gave a while back that I really like is, does playing violent video games as a child cause you to be more violent as an adult? So does playing violent video games cause violent behavior? I'll write a shorter version of that. I say this is interesting. Both of my brothers played a lot of video games growing up, and now they're both Marines, and now they're both security contractors. That's just anecdotal, not pointing one way or the other, but there actually has been some research done on this if you're curious. And it seems like the results are all kinds of mixed on that. But anyway, so your types of questions where you might look at the relationship between two variables could be about anything. Another common one, looking at head trauma in different sports later in life and so on. So we need to give some vocabulary to these variables. So our explanatory variable, think of this as another word is often the treatment variable. You can think of this as that cause variable in our cause and effect type relationship. So cause variable. And the response or our outcome that we're looking, you could think of that as our effect variable. So let's go back up in our different examples and make sure we can identify which variable might be the cause and the effect variable. Or in our notation here, explanatory versus response. So, does frequent cell phone use cause cancer? Our explanatory variable is the cause here. So, using your phone a lot, I'll use E for explanatory. Does using your phone a lot cause or have an effect, produce the outcome or response variable of cancer? So, I'll use R for response. So cell phone use explains the outcome or response of cancer. I'm going to skip the next two because those are more association type relationships, not necessarily cause and effect. The next bullet, does studying more increase grades? So the outcome that you're interested in, better grades, that's going to be our response or the outcome. And what influences that response is how much you study, so that's our explanatory variable. Try the last one on your own for just a moment. Playing violent video games. We're curious if that causes, so that's our explanatory variable, is that going to cause or explain the response or outcome of violent behavior as an adult? So unfortunately, I worded these all in similar ways, but explanatory doesn't always come first. It just depends on the wording. But explanatory is the cause variable, and our response variable is that effect or outcome that we're looking at. So make sure in this section you're very comfortable with identifying explanatory and response variables in a particular setting.